Hi everyone, welcome to my podcast, The Knitting Equestrian Nomad. This podcast is primarily about my knitting projects and my horsemanship journey with my two Mustangs, Odin and Bragi the Mustangs. They are both Mustangs that I adopted from the Bureau of Land Management Wild Horse Program. I have a link in my show notes and I keep looking at my notes. So I also talk about cooking and gardening and life stuff too. So my name is Corrina. If you are a returning listener, thanks for joining me. And I have to apologize for my last video. It was sometime later that I realized that I did not add any narration to the writing part of my that I tagged on at the end of my last podcast, and I apologize for that. You could probably hear me talking to my horse, but usually I try to narrate so I can explain what I'm doing, especially if we're going through a particularly difficult situation where he either doesn't understand what I'm asking or doesn't really want to. And Odin is my riding horse. He has a strong sense of no thanks, I'd rather not. So, and sometimes we just have to work through that, especially if what I'm asking is fair and reasonable, and I'm pretty confident that he can do that. So fair, reasonable, and possible. That is something that I get from Karen Rolf's Dressage Naturally, so I have her link in my show notes as well. So all that to say, thank you if you managed to get through that. If you didn't, I completely understand. If you are a new listener, welcome. Everyone is welcome here. I'm a fairly new podcaster and not very tech savvy. So this podcast is not highly produced. It's basically I record, I add some video at the end or some photos and upload. So there's no text, there's no music, so very low tech. Anyway, I live in the very northwest part of the United States in the Pacific Northwest with my partner, our two kitties, and the two horses that I mentioned. I am recording on October 30th, 2022. It is a rainy day. I often try to give a little weather report, and I thought that I would try something really clever here. I'm going to turn the camera around, I think. Maybe I can't do that, so bear with me a second. I guess I can't do that. So, well, I can. I was going to take it off selfie mode, but here, let me just show you what my view is outside. So it's raining and the leaves are definitely changing. We had a very long and wet cold spring that didn't end until July 11th roughly, and then we had a very long and dry summer which didn't end until just, I don't know, a week or two ago, so very late. So anyway, I'm very glad to see the rain, and it's been really nice because the rain has just sort of come in very softly and gently, which is nice because a lot of times what happens if we have a very long, dry summer, if a lot of rain comes in immediately, it just runs off, and then it can cause landslides and stuff like this. So this has just been a very nice, gentle introduction to fall, and as you can see from what I'm wearing, I'm very ready for fall, and I feel very cozy. It's a cozy day today. So this is a good segue into the first segment, which is about my old finished objects. So I'm wearing a poncho. So let me see. It just goes down to my elbow, and then it's stand up here. And this is a fairly, I can't remember if this is Aran weight or just feels like it. So just a very simple triangular shaped pattern. It's been so long I can't even remember if it was top down or bottom up, but if I kind of thinking, well, I can't really tell. So anyway, it has this kind of nice folded over neckline that's just stockinette. So it's basically stockinette and garter. And the front has this nice center stripe down. The back, I think I must have started on the back, because the back has a bit of a zigzag in it, which is pretty obvious that I had lost count at some point, and had to make up for that to get the triangular shape. So, and then I knit this. I had extra yarn, so I knit this hat out of it, out of the same yarn, and it has this kind of nice little flower pattern around the crown. And I would like to make another one of these hats. So if I have leftover yarn that's appropriate, I'm probably going to do that, because I really like the brim. It is, looks like just a stockinette kind of brim with this kind of interesting braid. I can't remember. I have no idea how I did that. Again, this was quite a while that I knit this. So, but I like where it sits. It just sits. My ears are right here, so it just kind of sits over the top of my ears, and then my hair covers the rest. So it's very cozy. New finished object. So I have to show you how flexible I am. I finished my Sockoween socks. So here they are. I started doing a pattern with these, but the yarn was just too busy, so I ended up ripping it out, the one sock I had done, and just basically knitting a plain pattern. And you might remember from previous episodes that I was really having trouble with the toes fitting. They were either too boxy or way too narrow. So in the book that I got this pattern from, which is just kind of a custom knits book that was gifted to me by one of Randy's relatives, Randy, my partner, relatives, it had alternatives for toes. And this is called the barn, I want to call it the barn door toe, but instead of kind of the standard decrease every other round, you start with a decrease and then you knit even for like 4 rounds, and then you do another decrease. So here's the pattern that I have made a ton of scribbles on. So this is a pattern just out of the book. It's a basic top-down sock pattern, and it is, barn toe. So that's one of the options, and I have found that to be the best fitting. I have struggled mightily with sock patterns, just them not fitting my feet, and I'm sure that the toe has been part of it. Just also understanding what the anatomy of a sock, so the heel. Actually, I'll take my sock off so I can show you. So the anatomy of a sock is, this is the cuff, and I think I did 15 rows of 2x2. This is the leg, and this is, I think this is the longer sock. This might be theoretically 8 inches, and I think I did 48 rounds in stockinette. And then you start the heel, and I do the heel, flap, and gusset. Sorry, I'm getting really warm because I am indoors and I'm dressed for outdoors. So this is the heel flap, and then this pattern is a slip knit, and then on the way back you do the purl. So I can't remember what the advantage to this type of heel is, but it may produce a double fabric. Is that what it does? Anyway, so it has a little bit of a different pattern, has kind of that ridge look, and then you shape the heel, return the heel, so there's some decreases here, and then and that's called, I think that is just shaping the heel or turning the heel, and then you pick up stitches so that you're going to knit in the round again, and this is the gusset. And there is because you have a lot of stitches, because you have to pick up like 16 stitches on each side, plus the instep. This is the top part of your foot here, and then yeah, and then this is the bottom, and then this becomes the foot. So after you do the decrease until you get back to your original number of stitches on your needle, which is about here, then you knit the foot all the way to the toe. And I think this is just probably a couple rows too big, but I think if I knit 53 foot rows, and I think if I just reduced it to 50, it would fit perfectly. I just wasn't sure about the barn toe, but the barn toe for me actually ends up being like 29 rows. So very nice, and it fits my foot perfectly. So, so pleased, super pleased about that. And I knit these in a week. This is for, this is the only thing I knitted on all week. So my other whips have languished. But it was nice to know that I could knit a pair of socks in a week if I concentrated. I forgot what I was going to say about the, oh, I know. So this pair of socks is for a knit along. It's for the Bakery Bears Sockoween cow. So I have one entry for that. One finished object. So the object was just to knit along in the spirit of Halloween, and you didn't even have to finish the object. So that I thought that was very generous. I think there's a prize. I don't remember what it is. There's a lot of people who participated, and so Kay Jones does, she's a designer, so she has patterns, and she also hand dyes yarn. She has beautiful yarn. I have not ordered any from her yet because she lives in Great Britain, so I have generally tried just ordering domestic yarn. So those are my Sockoween socks, but that leads me to my next project, which is a whip that I just started this morning because I spent a lot of time fussing with the yarn last night, getting it wound. I hand wind. I don't have a yarn winder because I generally only do one skein at a time, you know, once in a while. So this is another Halloween autumn themed. This yarn is from Legacy Fiber Arts. This is the Smell My Feet colorway with the mini. So this is, sorry for the crinkling, this is it in a ball. Very pretty. And then the accent color is this. So this really pretty orange. So, and I just do just kind of a color pop at the top, and then I'll do the heel. And after I do the heel, I'll probably weigh it to see how much I have left, make sure I have left for the toe, because again, you know, my toe is 29 rows. I mean, I could, of course, shorten that if I wanted to a reasonable 15. So that is my whip. I just wanted to get that on the needles. And I am knitting the pattern. This is from the Ann Budd book, Master Class, Sock Master Class. And this is the almondine pattern that I originally tried to use this yarn for, but it was just way too busy and it looked pretty darn weird, even if I say so myself. So the almondine pattern is, it's kind of a fake cable. Some people might call it lace, which would be accurate, but it kind of almost looks cable-y to me, so that's what it looks like. I just printed it in black and white, or copied it in black and white. But yeah, I think that will work well with the Legacy Fiber Arts yarn. And I'll use the same construction as the basic top-down sock yarn. And this project lives in the bag, project bag that my mom made me, the Dragonfly project bag. Okay, I have glue on my fingers because I'm doing some gluing for my Halloween costume tomorrow. I'm not going to talk about that. There will be pictures eventually, so I will show those. I don't know, maybe I'll do like a little mini episode, or just tack on to another episode in the future. So pardon me while I have a drink of my tea. I'm drinking mint tea that's just out of some herbs that were needed to be used out of the refrigerator. So yeah, fortunately there was mint in there. My other whips, these are projects you have seen before. Continue to be on my needles. So this is the Lola top. This is by Kutovakika. She is a Finnish designer. And here, this is a paid for pattern. So here it is. It's a summer top. So I don't really expect to wear it for the remainder of this year. I have made some progress on it since I last podcast. So this is repurposed cotton yarn. So I have a million ends that I'm going to have to weave in. I'm trying to weave in as I go, but here it is. And theoretically, it's supposed to have 11 rounds of this repeat, but I don't think that's going to be quite long enough for me. So I may end up doing a couple more rounds, but I will measure the arm, measure from my arm down to what is often the top of my pants. If I always wore high-waisted pants, it would probably be fine, but I don't. I tend to wear pants that are around my belly button, and I just don't really need that gap. So this is a broken rib pattern, and it's a, 4 stripes of one color, 2 stripes of another. So fun knit. Glad to be able to use it. Used that repurposed yarn from a sweater I did not like that I made quite some time ago. It was a crochet pattern. This lives in my City of Thousand Oaks canvas bag. So I lived I worked in Thousand Oaks 2000 to 2003. I worked for the National Park Service, and this was a, kind of at the beginning of the, bring your own bags movement to farmers markets and whatnot. So City of Thousand Oaks is pretty progressive in the sense that it's planned development. Yeah, so it was kind of cool to work there during that time when I was in Southern California and also going to graduate school. Another whip that I have mentioned a million times, and I was just going to sit here and knit while I do this podcast. So this is my color work. This is a Caitlin Hunter design. This is called Ghost Horses. Let me get it going in the front ways. So you can see the yoke. You can see the little horses. And then it's just, I'm working on the body, and it's just a lot of kind of the same pattern repeat. So this is my next project that I want to focus on, because I would really like to get this done by Christmas. As you can see, I'm using pretty small needles. So, and this is fingering weight yarn. Yeah, and I have had to restart this a number of times. So, and even in this version, I had to rip back to here because this is where it originally divided for the sleeves, and the yoke just wasn't deep enough for me. So, so yeah, that's why I am continuing to work on it. So, and I just immediately was going to start off and make a mistake. So I don't know, maybe this isn't a good idea to knit while I'm talking, but I kind of wanted to get into a little bit of a storytelling mode today. just because it's one of those cozy fall days, and I would encourage you to grab, a nice beverage to enjoy and grab your project and just, knit with me for a bit. There's lots of people who have knit nights. I don't stay up late enough to participate in a knit night. So we get up really early in the morning, so I tend to knit quite early in the morning because I don't have to be to work as early as Randy does, but it's a nice way for me to start the day and drink a cup of tea and knit and listen to my or watch my podcasts. Last week I mentioned that I was going to add a segment of what am I ripping out and starting over. Well, I thought I was going to rip out the raglan sweater that I mentioned back in June, I think, in a June episode, because the sleeves, I was playing yarn chicken, and I was going to knit 3/4 length sleeves rather than full length sleeves. And what I didn't realize at the time is that, I should have, this part of my arm where the sleeves end is a lot bigger than this part of my arm, so they felt tight. But I wore the sweater again the other day, and it was really fine. So I decided I'm just going to leave it be. So I don't have anything for this segment. Thank goodness. It's kind of nice for a change for me, because I tend to knit while I'm doing something else, like I am right now. And it's a good way to make mistakes. But, as far as I'm concerned, mistakes are just your signature, that it's your custom design. And I recently started watching Stephen West. I don't do his knit-alongs. They're kind of fascinating to me, so I will watch the knit-alongs, and I know lots of people do like it. But one thing I do like is his philosophy about knitting. Oh yeah, you're supposed to end up with this many stitches, but if you don't worry about it. And I think that's exactly right. That's what makes your project custom. Just like this weird little zigzag down the back of my my poncho that I'm not going to show you. So I always figure that people are going to more notice when I come into a room than when I'm leaving, so that's why I haven't really bothered to undo it or anything. And it also lets me know which side is frontwards and which side is backwards. So, okay, what else do I want to talk about? What else have I been doing? Casting on. So the thing I am committed to casting on after I finish a garment, this garment specifically, this Ghost Horses garment specifically, is the Love Notes by Tin Can Knits. So I figure that by the time I get this done and then work on that one, it'll be ready for spring. So that's kind of the speed at which I knit, especially when I have a lot of projects on. The other thing that I plan on knitting after I get or if I just get tired of knitting the same thing, is the Owl Cowl, which is a free pattern by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. So you can go to their website and get that pattern. It's really cute. It's one skein of yarn with 6 minis. So and the stitch pattern looks like little owls. I love owls, so that just really appealed to me. I also plan on, after I finish this particular pair of socks that I'm working on right now, the socks that with the yarn by Legacy Fiber Arts, is the free sock pattern by Knit Picks, or from Knit Picks by Amy Snell. So, and that's kind of it's a 2-color, that looks kind of like a wave, and I'm going to do it in kind of opposite color, starting with the dark and ending in the light color. So, and one thing I want to say about Knit Picks, I ordered a big order from them and didn't realize I hadn't updated my shipping address. And I got the tracking notice and I didn't really think about it too much. But then I happened to check it one day and I noticed it was going to our old address. And I think the mail forwarding option the U.S. Postal Service offers expires after a year. Well, we've been here for more than 3. So I called Netbix, explained what my problem was, and I also explained that I didn't really give it any thought when I was ordering because I use PayPal and PayPal has my current shipping address. So they were really cool about it. I updated my shipping address and they are sending me all replacement with no shipping fees. So I thought that was extremely generous and kind and just a good way to be. I mean, hopefully where my package ends up, hopefully the people don't end up keeping it. So hopefully this is just, a good deed. So I certainly hope so. But I just wanted to put that plug in there for Nitpick since they very generously are replacing that order. So it'll certainly make me a returning customer. So, yeah. And I realize that a lot of smaller companies can't afford to do that. So that's, that is one advantage to doing the volume of business that they do. But it's also nice to be treated like a real person by, what I assume is kind of a large company. Okay, so new acquisitions, that's my next segment. I have none at the moment because I'm waiting for that big order from Nitpicks. And I am also waiting on the monthly fingering yarn of the month shipment from Freckled Whimsy. So we'll see if I stay with that. What usually happens is that Legacy Fiber Arts puts out what their latest and greatest colorway is, and I was like, oh, I have to have that. So I may not really need a yarn of the month club because I am probably impetuous and impulsive enough to just order it when I feel like it. So we'll see. Gardening, so that's another topic that I tend to talk about. Harvest, I think I think there's one more zucchini out there, and there's still tomatoes that are clinging to the vine. I'm just kind of waiting for the first freeze to really pull everything out, although I would like to plant some fava beans. Those can go in the ground now. Garlic can go in the ground now. So we'll see whether I do that. Other than that, I'm just growing like a little herb garden. So hopefully that will be on the deck all winter just for me to be able to use herbs in cooking and making tea and stuff like that. So I'll let you know how that goes. I'd also like to plant some winter greens. So there's some, I know you can grow rocket, and which I think is arugula, and which also counts as an herb, I suppose. And then some other, kale, of course, and some other greens. But I haven't done that yet, so I'll let you know how that goes. I did plant some seeds, like some lettuce and spinach and stuff like that, and they're not doing much right now, which is not unexpected. So, but it would be nice to have a supply of, at least a small supply of greens over the winter. So we'll see. My garden, like everything else, is a work in progress. The dahlias are starting to die out. My sunflowers are looking a little droopy. So I pulled out the rhubarb yesterday, the rhubarb stalks that were still hanging on, and just laid the stalks and the leaves over the crowns to help protect them during cold weather and hopefully shield them from if we do get a lot of rain. So, which is normal for us. All right, so that is it. Cooking projects. Make granola. I made granola this morning. I have sourdough bread dough going. Probably bake a loaf of that this afternoon. I made some soup out of stuffed greens and beans and summer veggies that needed to um, get cooking rather than just languishing in the refrigerator. So there's corn in that, so I just cut corn off the cob and put that in there as well. So it's and tomatoes. So yeah, and just add a little sausage for flavoring. You could certainly just do it completely vegetarian if you wanted to, but there is one member of our household that really likes to have meat in his meals. So just let me be clear about that. Me, I can be a little bit indifferent about meat sometimes. So, but you know, I don't completely object to it. I just hope that whatever is used as meat was raised kindly. Which, you know, some people would think that that's an oxymoron, and I definitely see that point. However, I do crave meat periodically, so I am not going to be a hypocrite about that. And you know, biology is biology, and there are some creatures that eat meat, there's some creatures that don't, and there's some that eat both. And humans are omnivores like bears and pigs and chickens and dogs. So whereas, you know, obviously cows and horses are herbivores and cats are obligate carnivores. In other words, they have to eat meat. So anyway, that's your biology lesson for today. I do believe, though, for the planet and for our own personal health, that eating more vegetable-based foods are better for us all the way around. So horses and life stuff, I haven't really taken any photos of the horses lately. I couldn't say why. I mean, I did ride Odin yesterday, so just working on some round pen stuff. I did ride a couple weeks ago. I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but I just got on him, no bridle, no halter, no saddle or bareback pad or anything. I just got on him and asked him to go forward, and he's like, no, I don't want to. It just took a lot of encouragement to get him to go forward at all. So, and I was just going to ride him around the pasture, see how he felt about that. Well, I guess he told me how he felt about that, and it's like, no thanks, could you get off now? So it wasn't a very long ride, but it was actually pretty strenuous for me to kind of get him going. But yesterday I did ride him, at least in the bareback pad. I do enjoy riding in the bareback pad. I think I have a much better seat. That's how I grew up riding, so I'm pretty comfortable with it, at least on Odin. I wouldn't claim to be able to ride another horse that was more energetic and reactive with just a bareback pad. So I might land on my keister, and that would be unfortunate. But Odin's super easy, and he's very comfortable to ride that way. What I've been working on is just going over some pulls, which kind of helps them lift their feet a little bit, helps them work their core, which we can all use. Working on forward motion, because that is his tendency to say, no thanks, I'd just rather stand here. And giving into the bit a little bit, just kind of softening to the bit. What that helps them do is put them in a position that kind of helps, again, it helps them use their core and develops their back muscles rather than being in what we call a hollowed out position where their back is more arched and their head is up. So, and their legs are kind of, I don't know how to describe this very well, but their legs aren't underneath them, and their legs are their base of support. So when you ask them to give to the bit a little bit, they can round up a little bit. It's hard work because they do have to use their core, and they also get their legs under them. So it's so I don't ask them to do that for very long, and it's also much nicer to ride when they are in that kind of more rounded position than hollowed out position. With Odin, it might be hard to tell because he has such a nice, comfy back. He's pretty round himself and has a broad back. Bragi, on the other hand, who I'm not riding yet, and that I made a mistake and went too fast with him, at least putting on the bareback pad last time, but he has higher withers, which is that kind of prominent piece at the base of their neck, and his back is more narrow, so I kind of don't anticipate being able to eventually ride him very much bareback. So, but we'll see. We'll get there when we get there. There's no rush with him. And then the other thing I'm working on with Odin is just doing some lateral movements, and that's for flexibility and just make sure he's listening to my leg cues. And he kind of struggles. He really likes to bulge his shoulder out rather than just moving it. He kind of leans on it, kind of like how you lean on a hip sometimes. He kind of does that with his shoulder, so which isn't always comfortable for him or me. But so we just fiddle with that, and hopefully we'll get there one of these days. Excuse me again while I take a sip of my tea. And then Bragi, my trainer was supposed to come out yesterday, but she needed to look for a horse for a client, so we postponed until next weekend. And what I'd like to work on with Bragi is just trailer loading, just so in case there's an emergency or we have an opportunity to go somewhere, that he is comfortable with that. So instead what I did is I just revisited some round pen exercises with him. And that's just, moving forward and being respectful of my space and stopping when I ask him to, transitioning up to a walk or up to a trot and down to a walk when I ask him to. Once he gets going at the trot, he tends to like to continue to go. So that was kind of funny. But, I just need him to understand that it's that he doesn't always get to decide when to stop and go, so that's up to me. But I'm very mindful of his level of fitness and also his mental maturity as far as his ability to stay focused for very long. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I mean, I certainly have goals in mind for him, but I have to constantly assess where he is at for those exercises. I've also been volunteering at a pony club program. There's 2 morning lessons on Saturdays that I help out with. Mostly I just set jumps, and sometimes if I see something that the kids are doing that might, if there's something that I can do that would help them, like get over a jump or something, I can offer that suggestion. So that's been really fun. I've been doing that for since mid-September, I think, pretty much every Saturday. I didn't go to the Pony Club rally last weekend. My farrier was coming and I needed to be here for her. So it was kind of a bummer to miss that, but I have my priorities, so and I have to make sure my horses are taken care of. And then I was just going to talk a little bit, it's getting kind of long right now. I was going to talk about the Equestrian Nomad part of my handle, and I had talked about that in earlier episodes, and I think where I left off was BG going to a training barn, and BG is the off-the-track thoroughbred that I had for close to 5 years. He was a very challenging horse, and unfortunately he colicked on February 7th, 2020, and passed away. He had I think what the vet called part of his intestines were twisted, and there was just nothing moving through there, and he was in an incredible amount of pain. It was a horrible thing to witness, and I hope I never have to go through that again, but horses have kind of flimsy digestive systems, and most people I know have had at least one horse colic, and that's kind of the way that horses, how their lives end, is colic. So it's just something to be prepared for. It's pretty ugly and very difficult to witness the amount of pain that horses go through. So I guess, well, let me just talk briefly about kind of where I left off with that off-the-track thoroughbred. So he came from a neighbor who wasn't riding him at all, and I thought he might have some athletic potential. And I did mention before that one mistake I made was that I didn't have a vet do a lameness exam on him because that plagued him for his life, and it helped me understand eventually a lot between the effect of pain on attitude, which makes complete sense now, and also just how much try horses have. So Beach he's pretty high strung. Again, he was an off the track thoroughbred, and so he had a really good work ethic, but it turned out he was just, and I was way out of my league as far as with this horse. I mean, I had some skills, but I learned more of a traditional way of horsemanship, which was more kind of maybe punishment based, and that's when I met Megan, my trainer, and she completely changed my mind and helped me understand things from the horse's point of view. So we didn't have a place of our own at the time, so I boarded BG at a friend's house that was nearby where he came from. I tried putting BG in a training barn, just a standard hunter jumper barn, and it just did not work out for him. Part of it was, his arthritis was undiagnosed. He was in a stall. He wasn't used to that. He really needed a lot of turnout, and that just wasn't available at that barn. And the amount of exercise that he was able to do just wasn't adequate to meet his needs. So I moved him to the friend's house, and where he had pasture. And then again, I was kind of on my own as far as training and was way out of my league. But I felt like, and then Megan was able to come out to the property and help me train him, but we were getting very limited on what we could do with him there. So she moved to this barn where there was, definitely better turnout, bigger. When he was in the stall overnight, there was at least a small pen outside that he could walk around at night. So I did move him to that barn in June of, I got him in 2015. I started working with Megan in 2016 in February, and then he moved to that barn in June of 2016. We happened to be, Randy and I were on vacation doing a bike ride in Wisconsin. And one of the things that was happening while we were gone was having a kind of the lameness evaluation just to figure out where we were with him. And the first thing that we found was that he just needed corrective shoeing. So we did that. And I think that worked for a while. It relieved his pain for a while, and until he couldn't tolerate it anymore. And then eventually, we got going riding with him, and it was just really great, and thinking we could do these really low-level things, but then he would just become unpredictable as far as, when he would kind of erupt. And it's just not fun to ride that when you just don't know whether you're riding a time bomb or not. I spent a lot of time hand walking him and teaching him about obstacles and teaching him to be confident. We did a lot of, I learned about target and positive reinforcement at that time. So we would walk up to the owner's house, and they had boats and tractors and tarps and all that kind of stuff. So we'd go up and graze and go check out the boat and go check out the tarps. So it increased his confidence a lot. And then there was this small trail system out back, and a lot of times I would just take him on a hand walk out there. So that was fine. And then there was just kind of a kerfuffle in the barn, and Megan had to move. And the other thing that happened at the same time is that we were really exploring, we were calling in the experts at that point as far as like, why is this horse doing this? And we pretty much, by then we pretty much figured it was pain related. I mean, he was a good boy, he wanted to please, but there was clearly something wrong. So I think at that point I was doing a workup with him from the feet up to find out what was wrong, and we got this specialist in who was going to do back x-rays, because I think we were at that point looking for kissing spine or something along with his spine. But basically what we learned is that when we started the exam from the feet up is that he had a significant amount of arthritis in his fetlocks, which is really their ankles. So, and the way the vet explained it is like, sure, I can see where he can go along for a while, and then all of a sudden he has this sharp twinge, and it's like, ow! And he's very reactive about that, and he was a big horse. So, and you're just not really going to control that. And I mean, I got bucked off of him once and skinned up my elbow, and that was, I don't know, it just wasn't any fun to ride. So ultimately, after that diagnosis, Megan moving, we decided to retire him. And fortunately, she knew someone who boarded horses on her private property. She had an arena that I could do work in. Super nice people. And so I moved him there, and ended up being good friends with the owner. In fact, I haven't talked to her in a while, and I miss her. Cheryl, if you're somehow listening, which I kind of doubt it since Cheryl doesn't knit. Anyway, she's a wonderful, wonderful owner, and person to board with. So, and she has a Mustang. She has a Kiger Mustang. So that's the Nomad part of this story, is just being all over the place, I guess. I mean, with intention. I mean, Nomads just don't go all over the place without intention. So that's, the journey has been with intention, but I have been rather nomadic about getting to certain places. It has not been it's not like I've set a goal. Okay, I thought I wanted to set a goal of being a hunter jumper again when I got Beach. I thought that's what he would be good at. I thought I would want to try eventing. He had done that before as post-racetrack career. But it just wasn't good for him. And then while Beach was at Cheryl's, I got really interested in Mustangs, in part because Cheryl had one, in part because I was influenced by Elisa Wallace, who has Mustangs. She's a world-class athlete, eventer, and has done some amazing things with them, and other people were. So I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And so that's when I got Odin, my first Mustang. I got him in 2018 and put him in training with Megan, and we got him. He had been at least started under saddle, but Megan wanted to fill in some gaps in his training because the trainers that participate in the Mustang makeovers have 100 days to get as far as they can with them. So there's a lot of holes in the training, which is completely understandable. So we started with that, and then I eventually moved him to Cheryl's, and then it wasn't too much later than that we bought our place here in 2019, and I moved both Beach and Odin here in July of 2019. So so that was the first time I'd had horses at home in a long time. gosh, since probably the 80s, maybe, or early 90s. So it's been a real learning experience over the last 3 years, and you know, I've really changed the way that I do things, and you know, my philosophy about horse keeping has changed. So as far as like setting any goals, I have no idea what Odin and I are going to do. But you know, we'll just figure it out. We'll just find the best place, the best course of action, the way that nomads do. So I probably yammered on a bit. I'm not sure what I'm going to put at the end of this video, if anything. I might put a picture of the sock that I ripped out. My original intent with these Halloween socks, so you can just see what it looked like, what the difference is. And I don't know. So I have the resources for my horsemanship and knitting and gardening videos in my show notes. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.